I checked into a hotel one evening expecting nothing more than a quiet night of rest. But when the housekeeper slipped me a towel with a note that said, "Sleep with the lights on, don't ask," I felt a chill run through me. When I asked why, she looked me straight in the eye and whispered, "You'll see." At that moment, I thought it was some kind of joke, but by midnight, I would learn she was deadly serious. Before I continue, take a moment to subscribe to this channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 27 years old, and I was traveling alone for work after a long week of meetings. I had been moving from one city to another, and I was already worn out, both in body and spirit. The breakup I had gone through a few months earlier still weighed heavily on me, and every empty hotel room felt like another reminder of how alone I really was. This particular hotel was recommended by my Aunt Grace. She had stayed there once and told me it was charming, a little old but full of character. The lobby was quiet when I arrived, almost too quiet, as if people were avoiding speaking above a whisper. The staff were polite, but their smiles looked forced, and I noticed the way they avoided long eye contact. I told myself I was just tired and overthinking, but my nerves were already on edge. I called my mom to let her know I had checked in safely. She laughed when she heard how uneasy I sounded. "Emily, don't let your imagination run wild. You always scare yourself for no reason," she teased. I tried to laugh with her, but the truth was that something about the place didn't feel right. I unpacked my things carefully, placing a framed photo of my younger brother Ryan on the nightstand. He's a Marine, currently stationed overseas, and that picture of him smiling in his uniform always gives me strength when I'm away from home. That's when I heard a knock at the door. It was the housekeeper, Marta, carrying fresh towels. She had kind but tired eyes, and as she set the towels on the bed, she slipped one into my hands with a folded note resting on top. She leaned in just enough to whisper, "Sleep with the lights on." Then she turned and walked out quickly, as if she didn't want anyone to see her talking to me. I unfolded the note, my heart beating fast. The handwriting was shaky, the words rushed, and underlined twice. "Don't ask." I couldn't stop myself. I ran after her down the hall. "Wait," I called out. "Why would I need to keep the lights on?" She paused, her face pale, and shook her head. "You'll see. Please, just do it." Then she walked away, leaving me more unsettled than ever. I went back to my room holding that note in my hands like it was a lifeline. The words were simple, but heavy. "Sleep with the lights on. Don't ask." I told myself there had to be some reasonable explanation, but the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Why? Would a housekeeper risk her job to warn me about something unless she truly believed I was in danger? I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the mirror across from me, its large frame catching the light in a way that made it look older than the rest of the room. My skin prickled with unease, but I tried to push the feeling aside. I decided to go down to the lobby to ask Marta again. She was standing near the supply cart, folding towels, and when she saw me, her face went pale. "I told you not to ask," she whispered, her eyes darting toward the security camera in the hallway. I pressed her gently, trying to keep my voice calm. "Marta, please. I can't just follow a warning like that without knowing why. What am I supposed to be afraid of?" She glanced around nervously before replying. "Some things can't be explained, only survived. Do what I said, and you'll be safe." Then she turned her back and continued her work, making it clear the conversation was over. Her words made my stomach twist. I returned to my room, unsettled, thinking about how strange everyone in the hotel had seemed since I arrived. At the front desk earlier, I had mentioned my room number to the clerk, Mr. Dalton, and I swore his hands trembled when I said it. He quickly changed the subject and wished me a good night, but his reaction lingered in my mind. When I walked down the hallway to my floor, I noticed the few other guests seemed hurried, almost frightened, like people who wanted to reach their rooms without stopping to talk. The deeper I looked, the more I realized I was surrounded by unspoken tension. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was guarded, as if everyone here knew something I didn't. By the time I returned to my room, night had fallen. The air felt cooler, and the hallway lights flickered slightly as I passed under them. I shut the door behind me and locked it, leaning against it for a moment. The mirror caught my eye again. It stood directly opposite the bed, stretching almost from the floor to the ceiling, framed in heavy wood. I stared at my reflection longer than I meant to, and for a second I swore it didn't move quite in sync with me. My heart skipped, and I laughed nervously at myself. "You're just imagining things, Emily," I muttered. To distract myself, I opened my laptop and pulled up a show on Netflix. The sound filled the room, but I couldn't shake the awareness of the mirror in my line of sight. No matter how hard I tried to ignore it, my gaze kept drifting back. The glass seemed darker than it should have been, like it was holding shadows that didn't exist in the room itself. Around 11 o'clock, I tried to convince myself I was being silly. I even thought about calling my mom again, but I didn't want to hear her teasing me for scaring myself. Instead, I texted my brother Ryan overseas. "Hey, if I don't text you in the morning, call me nonstop, okay?" I added a laughing emoji to make it seem like a joke, but in my chest, it didn't feel like one. He replied almost right away, "You're nuts, Em. But fine. Deal." Even through the joke, I could sense his concern, and that gave me a little strength. The minutes dragged as midnight crept closer. The warning note sat on my nightstand beside the photo of Ryan, a constant reminder that this wasn't just in my head. Someone had seen something real enough to risk warning me. My body ached with tension, my muscles tight, my mind racing with every possibility. What could possibly happen that made the lights so important? At 11:45, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sleep. I pulled the chair from the small desk and set it in front of the mirror, facing it directly. If something was going to happen, I wanted to see it. I turned on every light in the room, the desk lamp, the floor lamp, even the bathroom lights spilling into the hall. The room glowed brighter than day, but my nerves still screamed that I wasn't safe. I sat down in the chair, gripping the towel Marta had handed me like a shield, and stared at my reflection. The seconds ticked by, each one louder in my head than the last. My reflection looked tired, my eyes heavy from lack of sleep, but I didn't dare blink for long. Then the air shifted. It grew colder, sharp enough that I could see my breath in the light. The walls seemed to tighten, the silence pressing down around me like a weight. I glanced at the clock on the nightstand. 11:59. One more minute. My pulse raced in my ears. As the clock flipped to 12 eyes, the lights flickered once, just enough to make my stomach drop, and then I saw it. In the mirror, behind my reflection, stood a dark shadow, tall and still, its outline blurred but unmistakably human. I spun around in my chair, but the room behind me was empty. My hands shook as I turned back to the mirror, and my reflection stared at me with wide, terrified eyes. The shadow had not moved. It was still there, looming just beyond me, waiting. The moment I saw that shadow in the mirror, every part of me wanted to run. My chest tightened, my throat felt dry, and the instinct to leave the room and never look back screamed inside me. But something in me refused to turn away. Maybe it was anger at being afraid, or maybe it was curiosity that went too deep. But I stayed rooted to the chair. I wanted to know what I was up against. I sat there gripping the towel Marta had given me so tightly, my knuckles turned white. The shadow didn't move, yet it seemed alive, as if it was waiting for something. I turned around again quickly, checking every corner of the room, under the desk, even the bathroom doorway. Nothing. Empty air. But when I turned back, the figure in the mirror was still there. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to think clearly. Running to the front desk now wouldn't change the fact that something was happening in my room. If Marta's warning was real, then my only option was to face it. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and texted Ryan again. "Shadow in my room, only in the mirror. If I don't reply soon, call me." It felt dramatic, but I needed someone to know. Almost instantly, he responded, "Emily, stop messing with me." "What do you mean, Shadow? You're scaring me." I didn't answer. My eyes were locked on the mirror, my body frozen between fear and determination. I tried speaking to it. My voice shook, but I forced out the words. "What do you want?" My reflection mouthed the same, but the shadow behind me didn't react. I leaned forward, heart pounding. "Why are you here?" For a split second, I thought nothing would happen. Then the shadow lifted an arm, slow and deliberate, pointing toward the bed behind me. My stomach flipped. I turned sharply, but again, the room was empty. The covers on the bed were smooth. Still, I felt something shift, like the mattress was heavier. I whispered to myself, "This isn't real. This can't be real." But then I saw it. The blanket dipped as if someone invisible had sat down. The air thickened, and I could hear the faint sound of fabric stretching under weight. My body screamed at me to leave, but I forced myself to stay. This was the moment Marta had warned me about. I stood up slowly, the towel clutched to my chest. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold on to it. Every step toward the bed felt like wading into water, my legs heavy with fear. "If you're real," I whispered, "show me." The lights flickered again, and the air grew even colder. I swore I could hear a low hum, like a whisper just beyond hearing. My skin broke out in goosebumps. I backed away, retreating toward the door, but then I stopped. If I left the room, would the thing follow me? Would I be leading it into the hallway where others were? The thought of putting anyone else in danger made me hesitate. I needed to make a choice. Stay and confront this, or run and never know what it wanted. Marta's words came back to me clearly. Some things can't be explained, only survived. Maybe this was the moment she meant. So I decided to prepare myself, to fight in the only way I could. I turned on my phone's flashlight and aimed it directly at the mirror, the brightest beam I could manage. For a second, the reflection warped, like ripples spreading through water. The shadow seemed to waver, almost retreating, but then it grew sharper again, clearer than before. My heart hammered. "You don't scare me," I said, though my voice cracked. Saying it out loud gave me the smallest burst of strength. I pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat again, staring directly at the mirror. If this thing wanted to make itself known, I wasn't going to look away. Time dragged, every second a lifetime. The clock on the nightstand showed 12:10, but it felt like an hour had passed. My body was tense, my mind racing, but I forced myself to breathe steadily. Each breath came out shaky, but it kept me grounded. Then something shifted. The shadow in the mirror moved closer, not just to my reflection, but to me, as if the glass was no longer a barrier, but a doorway. Its outline pressed against the surface, and the mirror seemed to ripple outward. The sight made my stomach twist in pure terror. I gripped the towel harder. Marta had given it to me for a reason. Somehow it wasn't just a piece of fabric. It felt heavy in my hands, almost charged. I didn't know what to do with it, but I knew it mattered. "Stay back," I shouted at the mirror, my voice filling the room. "You're not welcome here." For a moment, I thought I saw the shadow pause. My reflection stared back at me with wide, panicked eyes. But then I noticed something horrifying. My reflection's lips moved on their own, forming words I hadn't spoken. I couldn't hear them, but I could see them. "Let me in." That was the breaking point. I stood up, towel in one hand, phone flashlight in the other, and faced the mirror head-on. My body shook with fear, but my decision was made. I wasn't going to wait for whatever it was to cross over. I was going to fight to keep it on the other side. The choice was terrifying, but it gave me purpose. This was no longer about being curious. It was about survival. When I finally stumbled out of that room with Marta at my side, my legs felt like they could barely hold me up. My body was shaking so violently, it felt like my bones were rattling inside me. Marta had grabbed my wrist at the exact moment the mirror rippled, yanking me into the hallway as if she had been waiting for that moment all along. My heart was racing, my mind replaying the image of my reflection mouthing those words. "Let me in," and the shadow pressing forward, like it was about to step into my world. The hallway wasn't much brighter, but being away from that mirror felt like I had been pulled back from the edge of a cliff. Other guests were already gathered in the corridor. Some looked terrified, some resigned, and a few avoided eye contact altogether, as if they had seen this happen before. Mr. Dalton, the desk clerk, appeared moments later, pale and visibly sweating, carrying a ring of keys in his hand. He didn't ask questions. He simply nodded at Marta, then locked my room door behind us. His lips pressed into a tight line, and when I demanded an explanation, he shook his head. "We do everything we can to contain it," he muttered under his breath, "but it doesn't always stay quiet." The way he said it chilled me even more. "What is it?" I asked, my voice trembling. He just looked at me for a long moment and said, "Not everyone makes it through their first night here. You should be thankful Marta was the one who found you." His words made my stomach lurch. It wasn't just me. This had happened before. The hotel refunded me immediately. No argument, no questions, and arranged for a cab to take me anywhere else I wanted to go. That should have made me feel better, but instead, it made me feel worse. Their willingness to pay me off without a fight was proof this was no isolated incident. Something dark and unexplainable lived inside that hotel, something they couldn't control, only cover up. Before I left, I turned to Marta. She was exhausted, her shoulders slumped, but she managed a faint smile. I hugged her tightly, tears stinging my eyes. "You saved my life," I whispered. She shook her head. "No, you saved yourself by listening. Most people don't." She pulled back and added softly, "Keep the lights on whenever you feel the dark pressing in. It may not follow you, but it remembers." Those words have echoed in my head ever since. The ride home was silent. I stared out the window, watching the city blur past, but my mind was locked in that room, replaying the moment the towel hit the mirror and vanished inside. I wanted to believe leaving meant it was over, that I was free from whatever had tried to reach me, but deep down, I knew some part of it had followed me, if only in memory. When I finally reached my apartment, I tried to shake it off. I unpacked slowly, telling myself I was safe now, that I could sleep in my own bed and leave the nightmare behind. But as I pulled clothes from my suitcase, my hand froze. Folded neatly on top of my sweaters was the same towel Marta had given me. I knew for certain I had left it behind. My knees went weak, and I had to grip the edge of the dresser to steady myself. I held it in my hands for a long time, trying to decide if it was a warning, a reminder, or something else entirely. Was it a sign that I had carried a piece of that room with me? Or was it Marta's way of making sure I stayed protected? To this day, I don't have an answer. That night, I didn't turn off a single light in my apartment. Every lamp, every bulb, every flicker of brightness stayed on until the sun came through my windows. And even now, months later, I find it impossible to sleep in complete darkness. The whole experience changed the way I see warnings, especially the ones that don't come with explanations. We live in a world where we demand answers for everything, but sometimes survival doesn't wait for answers. Sometimes survival depends on trust. Marta risked herself to give me that warning, and because of her, I am still here to tell the story. I also realized something about myself. For years, I believed I was someone who panicked easily, someone who couldn't stand against real fear. But in that moment, when it mattered most, I didn't run. I stayed. I faced it, and I made the choice to fight. That decision didn't just save me in that hotel. It gave me strength I carry into every part of my life now. Still, I can't pretend it's all a lesson wrapped in a neat bow. There are nights when I wake up in the middle of the dark and swear I see movement in the corner of my room. Sometimes I avoid looking directly into my own mirror, afraid of what I might find staring back. And every time I see that towel folded in my drawer, I feel the same chill that ran through me that night. Was I meant to keep it as protection? Or is it a tether? A reminder that the thing in the mirror isn't finished with me? I don't know. Maybe I'll never know. But one thing is certain. I will never sleep with the lights off again. And if you ever find yourself in a place where someone warns you without giving a reason, take it seriously. Survival doesn't always come with answers. Sometimes it just comes with listening. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more stories like this, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.